But today we're going to study again the same passage that we looked at last week. We're not going to do the same verses, but we're going to look at the same passage. Last week we talked about wisdom in our words and how we would use our words wisely. But this week it's wisdom in our walk. That's another way to just describe how we live our lives. We're going to have some more ground to cover, including some bonus verses that were kind of dropped in here last minute-ish. So we're going to have to go fast to get through all of this. But I believe if we're open to hearing what God has to say to us, we will get some wisdom dropped on us by Solomon. And I would pray that our time would result in our lives being different. But it's interesting when I think about the fact that Solomon is the writer of Ecclesiastes, and specifically these Proverbs that we're going to be looking at today. If you'll remember, when King David was getting ready to die, and Solomon was chosen to succeed David as king, he was young, he was inexperienced, and he knew that he was going to need help. And so he did the wisest possible thing that anybody could do, and he asked God for wisdom to be able to rule his people well. And because that request was not selfish, God gave him everything else as well. Wealth, possessions, and honor unmatched. And we see Solomon, this wisest man to ever live, was also one of the richest men in the history of the world because of that request. And although he started strong, he didn't finish well. See, Solomon knew intellectually all the things that he should have done. He had amazing insight into life, but he didn't always practice that personally. And so our challenge is in partly the same as his. First, we have to desire wisdom. Then we should ask God for wisdom. But then we need to be able to practically apply it to our lives every single day. You see, Proverbs aren't just amazing insights to admire, they're practical wisdom to apply. And as we talk through these verses that is going to directly apply to how we live our life, I think this is the thing that we're going to see. This is the main takeaway that I want us to leave here with today. Walking wisely in our ways leads to well-being throughout our days. And this is true not only of us, but every other life that touches ours is also going to be impacted by the way that we live, whether it's wise or whether it isn't wise. We can want the wisdom, we can welcome the wisdom, but if we don't walk in this wisdom, the wisdom will be wasted on us. It's not enough to know what to do or to be able to tell somebody else what to do. That's easy, right? We need to personally practice this wisdom as the weeks and the months and the years unfold in our lives. It's not enough to set ourselves up well and then just coast to the finish line like Solomon did. That dishonors God. It does a disservice to others and could have disastrous implications in our own lives. I'm going to say a word, and I want you to think about the first thing that pops into your head. You ready? Blockbuster. Now, that can mean several different things, right? First, before we get there, I want to read you the definition of that word. This is blockbuster defined. A thing of great power or size, in particular, a book, a movie, or other product that has had great commercial success. Originally, the term came about during World War II to describe some of these huge bombs that they were dropping. That makes sense, right? Blockbuster. But then quickly began to see that term applied to movies. And now we even hear it used to describe these big trades that we see in the sports life, right? I'm a big NBA fan, and recently there was one, the Luka AD trade, Mavs and Lakers, right? That was a blockbuster trade. But there's another thing that you may think of when you think about blockbuster, right? You guys see this? It's amazing that this thing still survived. I can't believe it that I found it. But this was the card that I used when my kids were growing up, that I would take them to blockbuster movies on Friday nights if both of them had good weeks in school. This was their reward. We would go, we would rent some movies, and then go home and watch them together. And I'm going to tell you what, when we would go on Fridays, that place was always super busy. But during that time, there was an upstart company pushing into the market that had a different model. And they were offering a subscription service through the mail to be able to rent these DVDs where you could order them, they send them to you, you send them back, you avoid the time and the hassle of going to the store, and kind of revolutionize the way that the industry was done at the time. And in the year 2000, the founder of this upstart company actually offered to Blockbuster the ability to be able to buy this company. And at the time, the price was $50 million. Well, Blockbuster said, no thanks, we're good. And then, not long after that, the same upstart began a streaming platform so that they could even give access to people more easily. Blockbuster saw it, and they failed to respond to it. They refused to adapt to this new technology, clinging instead to the old, outdated model. And it put them almost entirely out of business eventually. And you know, there's just one left. There's only one Blockbuster store left, and it's not far from us, right over in Bend, Oregon. But it's more of a novelty than anything else these days. See, Blockbuster had the information, but they didn't apply it. They had the opportunity, but they refused to take it. And I think that last store should serve as more of a warning to us than anything else, to avoid the same mistake that they made. They refused to be moved by this new information and instead stubbornly hung on to their old ways. See, new information should change our minds and lead to a change in our ways. In their pride, because they thought they knew better, they went from Blockbuster to just a plain old bust. And by the way, that upstart company that we talked about, maybe you've heard of them before. Their name is Netflix. And today they're worth over $300 billion. Do you think that the people making the decisions at Blockbuster look back and regret their decision today? This means yes, right? So let's ask God to help us avoid that in our own personal lives and walk in wisdom so we don't wind up wasting what He's given to us and missing out on what He has for us. Will you pray with me? Father, we come to you today needy, asking for your wisdom to be able to live our lives in a way that would be the most beneficial to the greatest number of people possible. And most importantly, God, in a way that would please you. So open our hearts and minds and help us clearly receive what you have to say to us. Let us be willing to be moved so that we can live wisely and not miss out on any opportunities that you send our way. All right. In Jesus' name, amen. So if you want to know where we're going, here's the scripture that we'll cover today. verses 9:18 through 10:11. Then we'll go from 10:15 to 19 and chapter 11, 1 to 6. We'll just go down in order. So we'll get right into it, starting out with the first two verses, 9:18 and 10:1. This is what it says. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. Then 19, dead flies make the perfumer's ointment give off a stench. So a little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. Here's a silly but accurate illustration of this proverb. One day, many years ago, in a land far, far away, in a different lifetime, there were some friends who were hanging out together, having a good time, talking, eating, listening to music, people inside, people outside. You know what that situation looks like, right? And one guy goes outside to engage in a conversation with a friend who is out there. Now, we don't know exactly how this happened. It could have been distraction. It could have been carelessness. It's hard to say. But the guy that was inside walks up to this table outside, and between exchanges in the conversation, he picks up a drink that's right in front of him on the table, turns it back, and takes a big gulp, only to find out that that same can had just been used as an ashtray. And can I tell you, I can still remember the taste of that toxic concoction in my mouth to this day. And I spit the rest of that stuff out faster than you could imagine. A good time was interrupted by one bad decision. A good drink tainted by just a little pollution. See, poor judgment can wreck what was once good and leave a bad taste in your mouth. And this is what we can learn from these proverbs that have similar meanings. Here's my point to these two. Wisdom is powerful, but it's also precarious. We see the comparison to the weapons of war here. And Solomon says he finds wisdom to be more valuable. With wisdom, war can be avoided. And then dead flies in the perfume. We don't think that way. We don't talk that way. But a pleasing fragrance ruined by a little rot. That's what we see here. And then we see it's easy to lose what has been gained by wisdom with one bad decision, right? The work wasted, the reputation ruined. It can take a lifetime to build something, but it can all come crashing down in an instant if we're not careful. We will be known by our ways. A careless word in public, an indiscretion in private, an emotional outburst that can cause catastrophic results in our life. A life savings invested poorly, and it could be gone tomorrow if it's not been done correctly. A family lost forever over one night of pleasure. A career destroyed with an unethical decision. Or all of your years in school lost because of a cheating scandal. And poof, just like that, all gone. We see it all over in culture, don't we? Respected people who have made these mistakes and will forever be remembered by them. Pastors, politicians, athletes, movie stars, musicians, and businessmen, all infamous for failure and loss. Maybe we know some of them. Maybe our lives have even been personally touched by something like this in lesser ways. So what do? We protect ourselves and what can be lost by not acting foolishly, by walking in the ways of wisdom. And I feel like I need to say something in here right now because this was not part of my original talk, but God shared it with me, and so there's somebody out here that needs to hear it. Somebody in this room may be thinking about blowing up their life right now by making one of these terrible decisions. And if that's you, and you're within the sound of my voice, can I just plead with you? Don't do it. Don't do it. It's not worth it. I promise you, if you don't heed the warning, you will regret it. Don't willingly give away what you may never be able to recover. And this is going to be a lot easier for us as we live lives that are characterized by integrity, as we allow our principles to guide us. We won't be as prone to these problems when our public and private lives are consistent and we have nothing to hide. We will be able to avoid these pitfalls more easily. All right, so let's go on to the next two verses, 2 and 3. A wise man's heart inclines him to the right, but a fool's heart to the left. Even when the fool walks on the road, he lacks sense, and he says to everyone that he is a fool. So here's my point in these two verses. Our walk gives us away. The way we live will be revealing. Like posture and gait and how we pronate, it identifies us. When you think about seeing somebody coming from far off, part of how you can tell who it is by how they carry themselves. And some people walk like this, 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 right? And so part of how we identify them is seeing that and knowing that they're coming. You see, we all tend to lean in a direction. We have a default, a tendency. Maybe it's better understood as a bent. Wisdom leads us or leans us the right way, and foolishness away from what is right. We see these words right and left in here, and I don't want us to be confused. This is not a political statement. It's not about donkeys and elephants. It's about sheep and goats. Because in Matthew 25:33, he referenced this. He's going to come and separate the two, the sheep on the right and the goats on the left. Wisdom leads to righteousness and reward, and foolishness leads to sin and judgment. See, the fool can't hide who he is. He doesn't have to shout it out loud at the top of his lungs for people to know. It's evident to all that he refuses to act in a way that is wise. It's on display for everybody to see, like some of the reality TV and talk shows that you guys love to watch. These people who proudly project their problems to everybody who's willing to watch. And I want to tell you this, the places that you go will give you away. It's not just the places that we go physically either. It's also the places that we go digitally. So be careful out there, friend. Next, we'll go to deal with a section related to authority in these next few verses. So first, we'll just do 10:4 by itself. Here's what it says. If the anger of the ruler arises against you, do not leave your place, for calmness will lay great offenses to rest. Have you been here before? Unwanted negative attention, maybe your fault, maybe not, but you're not being looked at in a positive light. You either made a mistake or you got blamed for something, and your boss, your supervisor, your manager is unhappy with you. This could also be a parent or a politician or a police officer, by the way. But when we find ourselves in those places, what is the wise thing to do? Well, here's my point. It's wise to show restraint. We often make things worse when we ignore this advice and escalate the situation by pushing back, doubling down, or trying to bring other people into the issue. But if we swallow our pride, keep our heads down, continue to do our jobs, and choose not to make waves, there's actually a lot higher chance that we'll come out on the other side unscathed and be able to regain peace much more quickly. We can prevent a situation that's simmering from boiling over. We don't always have to have the last word. We don't always have to have the last word. Somebody in here needed to hear that word. And on the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said this. He said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, And Proverbs echoes this wisdom. We see it in 14:29. Here it is. Whoever is patient has great understanding, but one who is quick-tempered displays folly. And then 19:11. A person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook an offense. And so here's my summary. Don't show up to every fight you're invited to. It's good advice, by the way. There's wisdom in waiting. There's wisdom in patience. Let's go to the next 3 verses, 5 through 7. There is an evil that I have seen under the sun, as it were an error proceeding from the ruler. Folly is set in many high places, and the rich sit in a low place. I have seen slaves on horses and princes walking on the ground like slaves. What we see right here is a picture of improper positioning. And we see it all the time, don't we? Favoritism and nepotism that leads to people being misplaced apart from their actual qualifications, their abilities, their experience. And here's the outcome. Whenever that happens, an undeserved placement always is going to equal an underserved people. We see political favors in every administration. Friends and family get the jobs, and professionals miss out. Business leaders hire kids and in-laws to take the spots that other people have actually earned. And even in churches, backdoor deals to surround a leader with yes men that won't question them or hold them accountable, only for others to be pushed out, overlooked, and ignored because of their unwillingness to go along just to go along to get along. It's ugly. And it's not only damaging to the culture and morale of the organization, but also does a disservice to all those who would be served by those organizations. Most importantly, it's an affront to God. So here's my bottom line for this group of scriptures. Wisdom is needed to properly place people and delegate responsibility. Equity and effectiveness should be prioritized above our personal agendas. Now let's shift our focus to work. 10:8 through 11. He who digs a pit will fall into it, and a serpent will bite him who breaks through a wall. He who quarries stones is hurt by them, and he who splits logs is endangered by them. If the iron is blunt and one does not sharpen the edge, he must use more strength. But wisdom helps one to succeed. And then verse 11. If the serpent bites before it is charmed, there is no advantage to the charmer. So that's a lot going on right there. And we've already heard the preacher say that work in and of itself is vanity, but also that work in its proper place as well as proportion can and should be enjoyed. And when I preached Ecclesiastes chapter 3, I said work as its best and highest, at its purest, actually can be worship. And that's God's intention for us, the way everybody gets the most out of it. But now we see the writer share there can be danger in our work as he continues to build this, not only working for the wrong reasons or the wrong people or even doing the wrong thing or being addicted to our work, which will create problems in our families, in our own personal lives. But there's also inherent danger built into some of the things that we do. Some of the projects that we do can be dangerous. And here's my point. Work can be painful if we aren't prepared, if we aren't aware, if we're careless. See, this is another warning here for us. And that doesn't mean just quit working. That's not the message here. Sorry, guys. I know some of you were hoping for that. But that's not the message. It just means that we should use wisdom when we work to help avoid needless injuries. How many people have you ever known or known of that do dangerous things, end up getting hurt, hospitalized, or even their lives actually coming to a halt because of the foolish things they do? Because they're not paying attention, they're too stubborn to listen, or they don't take this danger seriously. In short, because they're not walking wisely. I don't know how many people I've known over the course of my life that I could say, either first or second hand, who have been places they shouldn't have been, doing things they shouldn't have been doing, or doing them in a way that they shouldn't have been doing, and they fell off a ladder, or they fell off a roof, or they got electrocuted or set on fire, or even got an appendage cut off. I even knew one guy who was crushed by a tree. And all of that stuff was unnecessary. It didn't have to happen. All super sad. And you might be thinking, Jeff, hey, you need to find new friends. And this may speak just as much to your lack of wisdom as it does to theirs. And that's fair. That's fair. But think about it. I bet you know some people like this as well, or have at least heard of some people that similar things have happened to them. One example, Carla and I were at a birthday party several years ago, a kid's birthday party to boot, somebody's house we knew, and so you show up, and it's the typical thing that you would expect to see, kids running around, people eating cake and ice cream, there's a bounce house, adults just chilling out, talking, whatever. It's okay, at least for a while it was. But then there happened to be some guys there that towards the end of the party decided that they thought it would be a good idea to try to kill this huge anthill with fire and use gasoline at the same time. It didn't go well. But they weren't done because they refused to take that as maybe this isn't a great idea to do. No. Instead, they doubled down and said, well, maybe if we just will take out that tree that's right next to it, that will actually be able to help us get rid of this anthill. So here they come. They're going to chop this tree down at a kid's birthday party. And so I told Carla, I was like, you know what? This is not good. We need to get ready and get out of here. But I don't want to leave until I see what happens. And so we withdrew a safe distance, went out to the car, and we stood. She was on her side, I was on mine. And before anything happened, I could see it. I knew exactly, based on where that tree was and the way they were cutting it, what was going to happen. Sure enough, here it goes. Here comes this huge pine tree. It starts falling, people start scattering, and boom, it lands right on top of their house. I was like, Carla, it's time for us to go. Thank God, nobody was hurt. But it could have easily happened. That was some foolish stuff. And if you think it sounds like alcohol might have been involved in that, you may be correct. So, don't do dumb stuff. Listen to warnings from other people and realize as we get older, sometimes we age out of these things. Wisdom is sometimes humbly accepting that a certain thing is just beyond me. Anyone know what Proverbs 16:18 says? You will when I tell you. Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before the fall, right? Could be the fall of a person. It could be the fall of a tree. Either way, it applies here. But sometimes our intentions are the reason that things go wrong in our lives when we're working. Specifically, verse 8 echoes Proverbs 26:27 that says this, whoever digs a pit will fall into it. And if someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them. And it strongly hints at motives that are impure, as pits were often dug to help them trap other people. And then these stones were used to mark boundary lines. And God had set those stones up, and he warned people in the Old Testament, don't be moving those boundaries, right? So the harm you intend to cause others will come back on you. And then verse 10 says this, wisdom says success doesn't equal working harder unnecessarily, right? But working smarter is safer and more efficient. And then verse 11 speaks to timing and order being important in what we do. Waiting to do something that should have happened early in the process is going to lead to problems later on down the line. The steps that we take are ordered for a reason. They're only good and beneficial, though, if we do them at the right time. If we miss the moment, it doesn't matter. And we're sometimes too smart for our own good and think that we have a better plan, only to realize later that we should have trusted the proven process. So, follow the instructions instead of trying to wing it or come up with a better plan. I got bad news for you too, guys. If we're going to follow the instructions, that means we have to actually read the instructions. So, just be aware of that. Okay, verse 15. The toil of a fool wearies him, for he does not know the way to the city. Okay, so this is an interesting one, right? And this is a picture of the unproductive. He doesn't understand the point to what he's doing. The end product encourages us to continue with the work because we know where it's leading us. We understand the destination. We see that it's profitable. But the fool doesn't know where he's headed, and he can't see the finish line. When you believe the project is pointless, you get lost. If you think that the task is meaningless, you will lose motivation. You're much more likely to give up when you view this work as mundane or worn out quickly when the destination is obscured. And so here's my point. It's wise to work backward from the why. Because when we can see where we're going, where we're heading, it encourages us to continue to do the work. And so now let's go back and focus on leadership and the consequences of it in the next 2 verses. Woe to you, O land, when your king is a child, and your princes feast in the morning. Happy are you, O land, when your king is the son of nobility, and your princes feast at the proper time for strength and not for drunkenness. So this first word here, woe, is an expression of grief and a pronouncement of calamity or misfortune. Anytime we see this word, it means that trouble is brewing. So why can we expect a problem here? Well, because the king is a child. And this isn't about ageism. The point that's being made is one who is lacking wisdom and experience is making decisions. He's acting like a child. It speaks to immaturity, specifically in how food and drink are handled. And just because I could doesn't mean that I should. It's the difference between living to eat and eating to live, right? Wisdom says everything in its proper place, at the proper time, and in the correct proportion. And eating for energy to do the work of the people versus procrastinating to pursue personal pleasure. It's like kids who just eat junk food all day if you let them. They would continue to demand their way, and they can't see past what is right in front of them. But when we're wise, that's not true of us. Maturity says we do what we have to do now, so later we can do what we want to do. See, experience affects our decision. And maturity values delayed gratification, not instant gratification. Wisdom says there's a better way. What's good in the long term is in view here, not just what's easy and fun right now. And so here's my point. It's wise to develop discipline. We need this in our lives. We're going to walk wisely. And we see how this can play out when we're not wise with our time or don't have the correct attitude towards the provision that we possess in these next 2 verses. 18 and 19 say this. Through sloth, the roof sinks in, and through indolence, the house leaks. Bread is made for laughter, and wine gladdens life, and money answers everything. Here's my point. Lack of diligence leads to disrepair, and we expose our immaturity when we focus on food and fun first. So a good time prioritized over a good living that will provide lasting benefit. This simplistic view of life only works in the short term, but over time will be problematic. And when procrastination is prioritized, pain will be realized. It's okay to see food, drink, and resources as a gift from God and enjoy them. Money is helpful and has its place. But believe it or not, it's not the solution to every problem. Solomon has been teaching us through this book, as we've gone through, that money is not the ultimate answer. Okay, so we're going to get ready to finish this up. And I believe that the next few verses, 11:1 through 6, will directly contrast what we just read in the last several verses. So here it is, 11:1 through 6. Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. Give a portion to 7 or even to 8, for you know not what disaster might happen on earth. If the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves on the earth. And if a tree falls to the south or the north, in the place where the tree falls, there it will lie. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. As you do not know the way the Spirit comes into the bones in the womb of a woman with child, so you do not know the work of God who makes everything. And 6, in the morning sow your seed, and at evening withhold not your hand, for you do not know which will prosper, this or that, or whether both alike will be good. All right, anybody confused? These are the bonus verses that got dropped on me at the last minute. But let me try to help you out here. The verses here that we see are dealing with resources and how we attain them. More simply put, it deals with finances. That might help you get this picture in your mind about what Solomon is referring to. And here is my point about these 6 verses. In order to prosper in the future, we must be proactive in the present. It's wise to plan for the future, but in order for us to do that, we actually have to devise a plan and then work the plan. And energy spent on the correct things in the moment will result in a payoff down the road. If you want to see a harvest, you have to plant. Harvest later, plant now. If you want a return in an investment, you have to invest now so you can see that return later. Effort is required to effectuate an excellent experience. We should be about what we believe in. And so this could be a sermon on its own, but I know you guys want to leave, so I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to give you some bullet points here as I go through these 6 verses. So verse 1, it speaks to risk and reward. And it challenges us not to always play it safe because we have to factor in the upside. He says, put what you have to work and you will see a return. And he even says, do business in different places, maybe even overseas. Verse 2, diversify to reduce your risk. It says, be smart. Don't put all your eggs into one basket. Spread wide, not deep, and always have a backup plan. And 3 and 4, we're going to do them together. We can't control the results or the timing. But if we want a return, we have to start. If we want to receive something later, we have to begin to do something now. We have to sow to reap. But beware of paralysis by analysis. Stand around trying to decide what you're going to do all day and don't end up doing anything. Guess what? It's not going to get you far. Verse 5, God gives the increase. What and how are up to him. Only he can make it grow. So what do? We trust him. And then 6, use your time wisely, work willingly, and wait patiently. Ever heard of this saying, prior proper planning prevents poor performance? It's one of Carla's dad's favorites. He's an old Navy guy, and I think that's where he got it. But I think it's a great summation of these verses that I just read right here. So your reward is related to your regular rhythms. I've heard it said like this, and I think it's true. It's not what we do occasionally that matters, but consistently over time that makes the difference. So here's my question to you today. Are you in need of wisdom? Do you see a lack of diligence in your life? Discipline, maturity, or understanding? Do you see a lack of direction, preparation, restraint, or character? You see, it takes humility to confess our lack of wisdom to desire change. And then changing requires courage. But I've got two quick application points for us, and they're super simple. Here's my first one. We have to ask for the wisdom. If we need the wisdom, we have to ask for it, and we have to know who to ask for it, because it's great to be able to talk to your friends and get advice from other people. Maybe not nearly as good as going to somebody that's older, more mature, has more experience. But the ultimate is going to God to get wisdom. And James 1:5 speaks to that. He says this, if any of you lacks wisdom, what should you do? You should ask God. And what's he going to do? This is super good news right here. He who gives generously, maybe even better than that, without finding fault. And it will be given to you. One caveat. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt. So if we want wisdom, we have to ask for it. We have to ask the right person for it. And it's guaranteed that we will get it if we don't doubt. So here's my second application point. Once we know what to do, now apply the wisdom. And Jesus talks about a wise and foolish man in a parable that's recorded both by Matthew and Luke in their Gospels. And this is what he says. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, the wind blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash. And so the wise man doesn't just know. The wise man does something with what he knows. Wisdom is knowledge skillfully applied. Both men heard. Both men went through the storm. They were living out the same circumstances in their lives. And one did what was easy and convenient, and the other dug deep. He considered the long-term consequences of his actions, and he benefited with a very different result. And the other, he lost everything due to his foolishness, or his short-sightedness, you might say. Instead of being quick to act, A-C-T, and slow to ask, A-S-K, as is usually our default, wisdom says this, that we should be quick to ask for wisdom, and then slow to act, at least until the wisdom is revealed. And in general, this will lead to much better results in our lives over the long haul. There's a guy, his name is Ronald Wayne. Most of you probably have never heard about who he is, and I'm about to tell you why. In 1976, there were three guys who left this company called Atari, this little video game company called Atari, to start their own business. Three guys, right? Two of them had 45%, and Ronald only had 10%. And he only had 10% because of his limited investment and his limited responsibilities. So Ronald was tasked with two major things in this upstart company. First, he was going to design a logo. The second thing that they tasked him with is to be the tiebreaker in the case of these guys not being able to agree on major decisions that they might be facing. But only after 12 days, he got cold feet and decided to sell his shares back to his partners for $800 because he wasn't willing to ride out the risk, and he refused to believe in the potential benefits of the new company. You see, he took the easy way out, and he gave up, and he missed out on what could have been. If you don't know, his partners were Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. And this company's name is Apple. The value of 10% of that company today is over $300 billion. At least the logo looks good, right? But the benefits of wise living are far beyond our comprehension. And the consequences of our unwise actions can cost us tremendously. So the wisest thing that we could ever do is trust Jesus. Not only to give us wisdom to live life well, but first to give us life to begin with. All the wisdom in the world won't solve your greatest need, but wisdom will lead us to that truth. And in God's wisdom, he provided a way out for us so that we could all benefit. And this is the gospel, that out of his great love for us, God sent Jesus to live as a man, live a perfect life on earth, and then, because he did that, was able to die in our place as payment for the punishment of our sin. And then, on the third day, rise again to display his victory over sin and death. And then, by trusting him, we can have eternal life. We can be forgiven, and we can walk in freedom, wisely walking with him as we follow his example. And in a minute, after I get done praying, I'm going to invite you to respond to that invitation. If you have never committed your life to Jesus, you can do it today. Will you pray with me?